Aboard the luxurious sapphire yacht, anchored off the Devon coast, a glittering party masks a web of secrets. Sir Reginald Ashbourne, wealthy and proud, is found dead, shot through the heart under the stars. Who among his guests, his jealous wife, his scheming nephew, the ambitious lawyer, the indebted friend, or the alluring actress, wielded the fatal gun? Why was his brandy laced with a sedative? And where is the missing pistol? Enter Hercule Poirot, the brilliant detective whose little grey cells unravel lies. Can he pierce the fog of clues, scarves, cigarette cases, lighters, to catch a cunning killer before the police arrive? Dive into a classic Agatha Christie mystery where every smile hides a secret and the truth is as treacherous as the sea. Chapter 1. The Setup. The late afternoon sun cast a golden sheen over the calm waters of the English Channel, where the sapphire yacht lay anchored off the Devon coast. The vessel, a marvel of polished teak and gleaming brass, was the pride of its owner, Sir Reginald Ashbourne, a retired industrialist whose fortune in steel had afforded him every luxury. The yacht, with its 3 decks and opulent cabins, was more akin to a floating manor than a mere boat. Tonight, it played host to a select gathering of Sir Reginald's friends, family and associates, all invited for a weekend voyage to celebrate his 60th birthday. The air was thick with the scent of salt and champagne, but beneath the laughter and clinking glasses, an undercurrent of unease rippled through the party. Captain Arthur Hastings, retired from His Majesty's army, and now a frequent companion to the inimitable Hercule Poirot, stood at the starboard rail, a glass of untouched sherry in hand. He was not a man for the sea, preferring the solidity of terra firma, but Poirot had insisted they accept Sir Reginald's invitation. "Mon ami," Poirot had said, his eyes twinkling with that peculiar intensity. "Where there is wealth, there is motive, and where there is motive, there is always the possibility of intrigue." Hastings, accustomed to Poirot's cryptic pronouncements, had agreed, though he now wondered if this was merely an excuse for his friend to indulge in luxury. The deck was alive with guests, their voices carrying over the gentle lap of waves. Sir Reginald himself, a burly man with a ruddy complexion and a laugh like a foghorn, held court near the grand staircase, regaling a small group with tales of his factory days. His wife, Lady Beatrice Ashbourne, moved with regal poise among the guests, her silver gown catching the light. She was younger than her husband, perhaps 40, with sharp green eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Hastings noted her frequent glances toward a young man in a navy blazer, Reginald's nephew, Lionel Ashbourne, primly on a wicker chair, her needles clicking rhythmically. She was Sir Reginald's cousin, invited out of familial obligation, though her sharp tongue suggested she was no mere wallflower. Across from her, Dr. Ernest Fowler, a Harley Street physician and old friend of Sir Reginald, sipped his brandy with a distracted air, his brow furrowed as if wrestling with an unspoken thought. His wife, Mrs. Evelyn Fowler, a vivacious woman with a penchant for emeralds, laughed too loudly at a joke told by Mr. Victor Crane, a sleek, ambitious lawyer who handled Sir Reginald's business affairs. Completing the circle was Miss Sylvia Lang, a rising star of the London stage whose presence on the yacht had raised eyebrows. Her auburn hair and sultry voice drew attention, particularly from Lionel, who hovered near her with an eagerness that bordered on indiscreet. Hastings, ever the observer, noted the subtle tensions. Lady Beatrice's tight smile when Sylvia laughed, Clara's pursed lips as she watched Lionel, and Victor Crane's calculating glances at Sir Reginald's every move. "Dreadfully fine company, wouldn't you say, Hastings?" came a voice at his elbow. Hastings turned to find Poirot, immaculate in a tailored dinner jacket, his moustache waxed to perfection. The little Belgian detective seemed entirely at ease, his dark eyes scanning the deck with the precision of a watchmaker. "Fine, yes, but a bit strained, don't you think?" Hastings replied, lowering his voice. "There's something off, can't put my finger on it."
Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "You are learning, mon ami. The air, it is heavy with secrets. Each smile hides a thought, each gesture a purpose. But we shall see. For now, let us enjoy the hospitality of our host." The evening progressed with a lavish dinner in the yacht's dining salon, a room of mahogany and crystal chandeliers. Sir Reginald, at the head of the table, proposed a toast to friendship, family, and the open sea, though Hastings noticed his hand trembled slightly as he raised his glass. The conversation was lively, but punctuated by odd silences. Clara Dunworthy made a pointed remark about new money that caused Lady Beatrice to flush, while Victor Crane deftly steered the talk to Sir Reginald's recent acquisition of a rival company, a move that had evidently ruffled feathers. As dessert was served, a decadent chocolate soufflé, Sir Reginald stood to make an announcement. "My friends," he began, his voice booming, "this weekend is not merely a celebration of my years, but a chance to secure the future. Tomorrow I shall reveal changes to my will, ensuring my legacy endures." He paused, his eyes sweeping the table. "Some of you may be surprised." A murmur ran through the guests. Lady Beatrice's fork clattered against her plate. Lionel's smile faltered. Sylvia Lang's eyes narrowed, while Victor Crane's fingers tightened around his wineglass. Clara.
Dunworthy's knitting needles paused mid-stitch, and Dr. Fowler exchanged a glance with his wife that Hastings could not decipher. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of music and dancing, but the announcement had cast a pall. Hastings, retiring to his cabin around 10, felt a nagging unease. He jotted down the evening's observations in his notebook, a habit encouraged by Poirot. Sir R's announcement, tension at table. Lady B upset, Lionel nervous, Crane too smooth, something brewing. At precisely 10:45 p.m., as Hastings prepared for bed, a piercing scream shattered the night. It came from the upper deck, sharp and unmistakable. He threw on his dressing gown and rushed out, merely colliding with Poirot, who was already hurrying toward the sound, his face alert. They reached the deck to find Lady Beatrice kneeling beside a crumpled figure. It was Sir Reginald, his face ashen, his eyes wide and unseeing. Blood pooled beneath him, staining the polished wood. A single gunshot wound marred his chest. "My God," Hastings whispered. "He's dead." Poirot's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the scene. "Oui, mon ami, murdered. And so, the game begins." He knelt beside the body, his fingers tracing the air as if mapping invisible clues. The Sapphire Yacht is no longer a place of celebration. It is a stage for justice, and Hercule Poirot shall uncover its secrets. The other guests began to gather, their faces a mix of shock and suspicion. Lady Beatrice sobbed, clutching her husband's hand. Lionel stood frozen, his face pale. Sylvia Lang pressed a hand to her mouth, while Clara Dunworthy's eyes darted from face to face. Dr. Fowler pushed forward, declaring, "He's gone. Nothing to be done." Victor Crane lingered at the edge, his expression unreadable. Poirot rose, his voice calm but commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs, no one leaves this yacht. The police will be summoned, but until they arrive, Hercule Poirot takes charge. We have a murderer among us, and I shall find them, using order, method, and the little grey cells." Hastings felt a chill, not from the sea breeze, but from the certainty in Poirot's voice. The Sapphire Yacht, once a symbol of opulence, was now a gilded cage, and within it lurked a killer. Chapter 2. The Crime. The deck of the Sapphire Yacht was bathed in the harsh glow of the ship's lanterns, casting long shadows that danced with the gentle sway of the vessel. Sir Reginald Ashbourne lay motionless, his once vibrant presence reduced to a grim tableau. The blood pooling beneath him gleamed darkly, a stark contrast to the polished teak. The guests, gathered in a loose semicircle, stood in stunned silence, their faces illuminated by flickering light, each expression a study in shock, grief, or something. Over the group like a storm cloud. Poirot, unruffled as ever, surveyed the scene with the precision of a jeweler inspecting a flawed gem. His small, neat hands were clasped behind his back, and his head tilted slightly as he took in every detail. The angle of Sir Reginald's body, the placement of his arms, the single bullet wound in his chest. "Mon ami," he murmured to Hastings. "Observe the position of the body. He fell backward, oui? This suggests he faced his attacker, and yet no weapon is in sight. Curious, is it not?" Hastings nodded, though his mind was still reeling. "A gunshot on a yacht, Poirot. Someone must have heard it. And where's the pistol? Surely it couldn't have vanished." Poirot's lips twitched in a faint smile. "Patience, Hastings. The pistol, it will reveal itself in time. For now, we must secure the scene and establish order. A murder such as this requires method." He turned to the assembled guests, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Mesdames et messieurs, I ask that you return to the dining salon. No one is to touch anything on this deck. The police will be contacted, but until they arrive, I, Hercule Poirot, will ensure that justice is served." Lady Beatrice, still kneeling beside her husband, looked up, a face streaked with tears. "Justice?" she said, a voice trembling with a mix of grief and indignation. "My husband is dead, Mr. Poirot. What justice can there be for that?" Poirot inclined his head, his tone gentle but firm. "Madame, justice is to find the one who has done this, and to ensure they answer for it. I promise you, Hercule Poirot does not fail in such matters." Dr. Ernest Fowler stepped forward, his medical bag already in hand. "I should examine him properly," he said, his voice steady despite the pallor of his face. "To confirm the cause of death at least." Poirot raised a hand. "No, doctor. You are a suspect, as are all here. The body must remain undisturbed until I've made my observations. You will have your chance to assist, but under my supervision." Dr. Fowler's jaw tightened, but he nodded and stepped back. Hastings noted the exchange, wondering of the doctor's quick offer. Was it professional instinct or something else? He glanced at Poirot, who was already moving towards the body, his eyes scanning the deck with relentless focus. The yacht's captain, a weathered man named Barrett, pushed through the crowd. "Mr. Poirot, I've sent a wireless to the Coast Guard. They'll dispatch police from Torquay, but it'll be hours before they reach us. The sea's calm, but we're anchored a good distance out." "Très bien," Poirot replied. "Then we have time to begin. Captain Barrett, please ensure no one—"
"Naturally," Poirot said, kneeling beside Sir Reginald. He examined the wound, a neat hole just left of the sternum. "A single shot, close range, I think. The powder burns on his shirt suggest the weapon was fired from no more than a few feet away. And yet, no one heard the shot. This is most peculiar." Hastings frowned. "The music was playing in the salon, and the wind's been up. Could have masked it?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, but his tone suggested skepticism. He rose and paced a small circle around the body, noting the position of nearby objects: a deck chair, a half-empty glass of brandy on a side table, a silk scarf lying crumpled a few feet away. "This scarf," he said, pointing but not touching it. "It belongs to whom?" Lady Beatrice, who had risen and was now leaning on Lionel's arm, gasped. "That's mine. I must have dropped it earlier." Poirot's eyes flickered to her, but he said nothing, merely nodding. He continued his inspection, pausing at a brass railing where a faint smudge caught his attention. "Hastings, make a note. A mark on the railing, possibly a handprint. We must preserve it." As Hastings scribbled, the guests began to disperse towards the dining salon, their voices low and anxious. Clara Dunworthy lingered, her knitting clutched to her chest. "This is dreadful," she said, her voice sharp.
Reginald was a fool to flaunt his wealth. But to be shot like this, it's barbaric.
Barbaric, oui, Poirot said, but also calculated. A murder is never without purpose, Mademoiselle Dunworthy. Tell me, when did you last see Sir Reginald alive? Clara's eyes narrowed, but she answered readily.
At dinner, of course. He made that absurd announcement about his will. Then I retired to the lounge to knit. I heard nothing until the scream.
And you, Monsieur Lionel? Poirot turned to the young man, who was still supporting his aunt. Lionel swallowed, his face pale.
I was with Sylvia, Miss Lang, in the card-room playing bridge with Mr. Crane and Mrs. Fowler. We were there until we heard Aunt Beatrice scream.
Poirot's gaze shifted to Sylvia Lang, who stood apart, her auburn hair catching the lantern light. Is this so, Mademoiselle Lang? Sylvia nodded, her voice low.
Yes, we were playing until about 10:45. I stepped out for air just before it happened.
Bon, Poirot said. And you, Monsieur Crane? Victor Crane, his expression cool and composed, adjusted his cufflinks. As Lionel said, I was in the card-room. I excused myself briefly at 10:30 to fetch a drink from the bar. I returned just before the scream. Poirot's eyes lingered on Crane, but he turned to Mrs. Fowler. And Madame? Evelyn Fowler twisted her emerald bracelet nervously.
I was with the others in the card-room. I didn't leave at all.
Dr. Fowler spoke up. I was...
Scream! Poirot nodded, his face inscrutable. Merci. We will speak more in the salon. For now, I ask that you all remain there. Captain Barrett, please post a crewman to guard this deck. As the guests filed away, Hastings leaned closer to Poirot. What do you make of it? No one admits to being near the deck, but someone must have been. And that scarf, Lady Beatrice seemed rattled. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The scarf, the smudge, the absence of the pistol. These are pieces of the puzzle, Hastings. But the true clues lie in the minds of our suspects. Each has a story, and each story has a crack. We shall find it. They returned to the dining salon, where the guests sat in uneasy silence. Poirot took a seat at the head of the table, his small frame commanding the room. Mes amis, he began, a crime has been committed, and the murderer is among us. I will ask questions, and I will observe. You will answer truthfully, for lies will only delay the inevitable. Let us begin with the timeline. Who saw Sir Reginald after dinner? Lady Beatrice spoke first, her voice unsteady. I was with him until 10. We walked the deck together. Then I went to my cabin to rest. He said he wanted to stay out for some air. And the time of the scream? Poirot asked. 10:45, Captain Barrett confirmed. I checked the ship's clock. Poirot nodded. A window of 45 minutes. In that time, Sir Reginald was shot, and the pistol vanished. Tell me, who among you owns a firearm? A ripple of unease passed through the group. No one spoke until Victor Crane cleared his throat. I have a revolver, but it's locked in my cabin safe. I can show you. Very well, Poirot said. We shall examine it. And the rest of you? Heads shook. Denials murmured. Poirot's gaze swept the room, lingering on each face. Bon, we shall verify all alibis. For now, I ask that you remain here. Hastings, come with me. Back on the deck, Poirot resumed his examination, sketching a quick map of the scene in his notebook. The body was here, he said, marking an X. The scarf there. The glass there. The smudge on the railing here. We must consider the movements of each suspect between 10 and 10:45. And we must find that pistol. Hastings shivered, the sea air cold against his skin. It's a devil of a thing, Poirot. A man shot on his own yacht, surrounded by his nearest and dearest. Who could have done it? Poirot's eyes twinkled. That, mon ami, is what the little grey cells are for. The truth is here, hidden in plain sight. We need only to see it. The arrival. The sapphire yacht rocked gently.
The guests sat in uneasy clusters, their earlier gaiety replaced by suspicion and dread. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated near the grand windows, watched the reflections of the chandelier flicker on the polished table, his notebook open before him. He felt the weight of the moment, the sense that every glance and whisper held a clue to Sir Reginald Ashburn's murder. Hercule Poirot, however, was not in the salon. He had returned to the upper deck, where Sir Reginald's body still lay under a hastily draped tarpaulin, guarded by a grim-faced crewman. Hastings had offered to accompany him, but Poirot had waved him off with a curt, "Non, mon ami, I must think alone. Stay with the others and observe. The human face, it betrays much when it thinks itself unwatched." So Hastings remained, his pen scratching notes. Lady B pale, clutching handkerchief. Lionel, fidgety, avoids Sylvia's eyes. Crane, too calm. Calculating? Poirot's arrival on the yacht had been, as always, a matter of serendipity, or so it seemed. In truth, Hastings suspected Poirot had accepted Sir Reginald's invitation with more than a casual interest. The Belgian detective had a knack for appearing where trouble brewed, as if his little grey cells could sense a crime before it occurred. Earlier that day, as they'd boarded the yacht at Torquay Harbour, Poirot had remarked, "This voyage, Hastings, it will be illuminating." At the time, Hastings had thought it merely one of Poirot's theatrical flourishes. Now, with Sir Reginald dead, he wondered what Poirot had sensed. The salon door swung open and Poirot entered, his small frame radiating authority. His dinner jacket was immaculate, his moustache perfectly symmetrical, but his eyes burned with a quiet intensity. The guests turned to him, their expressions a mix of hope and apprehension. Lady Beatrice, her face drawn, spoke first. "Mr. Poirot, have you found anything? Do you know who did this to my husband?" Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. "Madame, mesdames et messieurs, I have made my initial observations. The crime is complex, but not insoluble. Hercule Poirot has faced many puzzles, and this one too shall yield to logic and method. But I require your cooperation. Each of you will be questioned, and each detail, however small, will be examined." Victor Crane leaned forward, his lawyer's voice smooth and measured. "Surely, Mr. Poirot, you don't suspect us all. Reginald was shot on the deck. Someone must have seen or heard something." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Monsieur Crane, in a murder, everyone is a suspect, until they
Was on watch at the bow. He saw nothing. "Bon," Poirot said. "And the wireless to the police?" "They'll arrive by dawn," Barrack replied. "Roughly 5 hours from now." Poirot nodded, his gaze sweeping the room. "Then we have time to begin. Let us establish the facts. Sir Reginald was last seen alive by Lady Beatrice at 10 o'clock. The scream was heard at 10:45. In that time, a shot was fired and the pistol disappeared. I ask again, where were each of you between 10 and 10:45? Clara Dunworthy's knitting needles clicked sharply. "I told you, Mr. Poirot, I was in the lounge knitting. I saw Dr. Fowler there reading. No one else came in." Dr. Fowler nodded. "That's correct. I was reading a medical journal. I didn't leave until the scream." Lionel Ashburn shifted uncomfortably. "I was in the card room, as I said, with Sylvia, Mr. Crane, and Mrs. Fowler. We were playing bridge." Sylvia Lang's voice was soft but clear. "That's right. I stepped out briefly for air around 10:40, but I was near the salon, not the upper deck.
I saw no one.
Victor Crane adjusted his glasses. I was in the card room, except for a brief moment at 10:30 when I went to the bar for a whiskey. I was back by 10:35.
Mrs. Evelyn Fowler twisted her emerald bracelet. I stayed in the card room the whole time. I didn't even notice Victor leave.
Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. And you, Lady Beatrice?
She dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. I was in my cabin, resting. I came out at 10:45 to find Reginald, to find him.
Her voice broke and Lionel placed a hand on her shoulder. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable.
Merci. Now I must examine the cabins and personal effects.
Captain Barrett, please ensure no one leaves this salon until I return. Hastings, you will come with me. Hastings followed Poirot out of the salon, his mind racing. What are we looking for, Poirot? The pistol?
Among other things, Poirot replied, his voice low. A pistol does not vanish into the sea without a hand to throw it.
And there are other clues, small things perhaps, but significant. The scarf, the smudge, the brandy glass. They tell a story if we listen. They began with Sir Reginald's cabin, a spacious suite at the yacht's stern. The room was a study in luxury, silk drapes, a four-poster bed, a mahogany desk cluttered with papers. Poirot moved methodically, examining the desk first. He lifted a letter, half-written, addressed to Victor Crane.
Interesting, he murmured.
Sir Reginald was drafting instructions for his will. He mentions a significant change, but does not specify. This supports his announcement at dinner.
Close, then paused at a small safe in the corner. Locked, naturally. We must ask Lady Beatrice for the combination. But first, he knelt, peering under the bed, and emerged with a small silver cigarette case. Mon ami, note this. A cigarette case engraved with the initials L.A. Lionel Ashbourne, Hastings said. What's it doing here? Poirot's eyes gleamed. That is the question, is it not? Let us continue. They moved to Victor Crane's cabin next, where Crane had given permission to inspect his safe. The revolver was there, as promised, untouched and fully loaded. Poirot examined it closely. No smell of powder, no signs of recent use. This is not our weapon, but it confirms Monsieur Crane's story, for now. In Lady Beatrice's cabin, they found her silk scarf's twin, neatly folded in a drawer. She said she dropped hers, Hastings noted. Could she have been mistaken? Poirot shook his head. No, the scarf on the deck was hers. The question is how it came to be there. He paused at a vanity table, where a bottle of sleeping draught caught his eye. Interesting. Lady Beatrice takes chloral hydrate, a small dose perhaps to calm her nerves, but in larger quantities. Dangerous. They continued through the cabins, finding little else of note. Sylvia Lang's scripts, Clara Dunworthy's knitting bag, Dr. Fowler's medical books. In Lionel's cabin, Poirot paused at a photograph of Sir Reginald and Lionel fishing, both smiling broadly. A happy memory, Poirot said softly. But happiness can mask resentment. Back in the salon, Poirot addressed the group. I have seen much, and I have questions. Monsieur Lionel, why was your cigarette case in Sir Reginald's cabin? Lionel flushed. I must have left it there earlier. I visited him after lunch to discuss business. And you, Lady Beatrice, Poirot continued. Your scarf was found near the body. Can you explain this? I told you, I dropped it, she said sharply. I don't know how it ended up there. Poirot nodded, his face impassive. We shall see. For now, I ask that you all remain vigilant. The truth is close,
but it requires time to emerge. As the guests murmured among themselves, Hastings leaned toward Poirot. "You're stirring them up, aren't you? Trying to see who cracks?" Poirot's smile was faint but knowing. "Precisely, mon ami. The murderer is here, and they are watching. Let them feel the pressure of Hercule Poirot's gaze." Chapter 4. The questions begin. The moment pressing down on him. His notebook lay open, filled with hasty scrawls, Lionel's cigarette case in Sir R's cabin, Lady B's scarf, no pistol yet. He glanced at Poirot, whose calm demeanour belied the intensity of his gaze as he surveyed the room. Poirot stood, his small frame commanding attention as effortlessly as a conductor before an orchestra. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and precise, "we are gathered to unravel the mystery of Sir Reginald Ashbourne's death. A man has been shot, a pistol has vanished, and the truth lies hidden among you. I, Hercule Poirot, will ask questions, and you will answer with honesty. The smallest detail may be the key to justice." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Lady Beatrice, her eyes red-rimmed, clutched her handkerchief tightly. Lionel Ashbourne, sitting beside her, stared at the table, his fingers drumming a nervous rhythm. Sylvia Lang, the actress, maintained a composed expression, though her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. Clara Dunworthy's knitting needles clicked with relentless precision, while Victor Crane's cool gaze met Poirot's without flinching. Dr. Ernest Fowler and his wife, Evelyn, exchanged a glance, their expressions guarded. Poirot began with Lady Beatrice. "Madam, you said you last saw your husband at 10 o'clock when you left him on the deck. Did he seem agitated or distressed?" Lady Beatrice hesitated, her lips trembling. "He was preoccupied. Reginald often was with his business affairs. He mentioned needing to think about his announcement, but he didn't elaborate. I thought he wanted solitude, so I went to my cabin." Poirot nodded, his eyes narrowing slightly. "And this announcement about his will, did he share any details with you?" "No," she said quickly, then softened her tone. "He only said it would secure the future. I assumed it concerned the company or perhaps Lionel." Her glance at her nephew was fleeting but heavy with meaning. Poirot turned to Lionel. "Monsieur Ashbourne, you visited your uncle's cabin earlier in the day. Why?" Lionel's face flushed. "It was about the family business. Uncle Reginald wanted my opinion on expanding into shipping. I left my cigarette case there by accident, as I said." "And after dinner," Poirot pressed. "You were in the card room, oui? With Mademoiselle Lang, Monsieur Crane, and Madame Fowler. Did you leave at any point?" Lionel shook his head. "No, I stayed until we heard the scream. We were playing bridge, dummy hand, so I was watching mostly." Sylvia Lang spoke up, her voice smooth but tinged with tension. "That's true, Mr. Poirot. Lionel was there the whole time. I stepped out briefly at 10:40 for air, as I mentioned, but I saw no one near the upper deck." Poirot glance, a gesture, perhaps. Sylvia hesitated, her eyes flickering toward Victor Crane. "Nothing specific. Everyone was focused on the game, though. Mr. Crane seemed distracted when he returned from the bar. He missed a bid." Crane's smile was tight. "A momentary lapse, Miss Lang. I'd had a long day. I fetched a whiskey at 10:30, as I said, and was back by 10:35. The barman can confirm it." Poirot nodded, turning to Evelyn Fowler. "Madame, you claim you never left the card-room? Yet you did not notice Monsieur Crane's absence? Were you so absorbed in the game?" Evelyn's fingers twisted her emerald bracelet. "I suppose I was. Bridge requires concentration, Mr. Poirot. I didn't think to watch the clock." "And you, Dr. Fowler?" Poirot's tone was mild, but his eyes were sharp. You were in the lounge with Mademoiselle Dunworthy. Did you see Sir Reginald at any point after dinner? Dr. Fowler adjusted his glasses, his voice steady. No, I was reading, as I said. Clara was there, knitting. We didn't speak much. Clara Dunworthy's needles paused. That's right. Ernest kept to himself and I was working on a scarf. The lounge was quiet until the scream. Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. Bon, let us consider the timeline. Sir Reginald was last seen by Lady Beatrice at 10. The scream was heard at 10:45. In that time, a shot was fired, unheard by all, and the pistol vanished. Monsieur Crane, you were absent for 5 minutes. Mademoiselle Lang, you were on deck for a moment. The rest claim to have stayed in place, yet someone was on the upper deck with Sir Reginald. A murmur ran through the group. Hastings scribbled, Crane's absence, 5 minutes. Sylvia on deck at 10:40. Alibis shaky? He leaned toward Poirot, whispering, They're all covering something, aren't they? Poirot's lips twitched. Oui, mon ami. The truth is like a mosaic. Each piece seems innocent, but together they form a picture. We must find the missing tiles. He turned back to the group. I will now ask about motives. Sir Reginald's announcement about his will caused a stir. Who among you expected to benefit or to lose? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Lady Beatrice stiffened. That's a cruel question, Mr. Poirot. I was his wife. Of course I expected to inherit, but I didn't think of it. I loved him. Lionel's voice was low. Uncle Reginald always said he'd provide for me. I didn't need details. I trusted him. Clara Dunworthy snorted. Reginald was tight-fisted, Mr. Poirot. He dangled promises but kept his wealth close. I expected nothing, and I wasn't disappointed. Victor Crane raised an eyebrow. As his lawyer,
Reginald's fortune. Dr. Fowler cleared his throat.
Reginald was my friend. I never thought about his will. Evelyn Fowler nodded. Nor I. We're comfortable enough without his money. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Yet money, or the promise of it, is a powerful motive. And there are other motives. Love, jealousy, revenge. Let us speak of relationships. Mademoiselle Lang, you and Monsieur Lionel seem close. Sylvia's cheeks flushed, but her voice was steady. We're friends, Mr. Poirot. Nothing more. Lionel nodded quickly. Exactly. Sylvia's a good sort, that's all. Lady Beatrice's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Hastings noted, Sylvia and Lionel, tension with Lady B? Poirot continued, his questions relentless, but delivered with a disarming courtesy. He asked about Sir Reginald's business dealings, his health, his recent moods. Each answer added to the tapestry of the evening, but none revealed the killer. Yet Hastings could see Poirot's mind at work, cataloguing every word, every pause, every glance. As the questioning drew to a close, Poirot addressed the group. Mes amis, I have heard much, and I have seen much. The truth is here in this room, in your words and your silences. I ask that you remain in the salon while I confer with Captain Barrett. We must ensure the yacht is secure until the police arrive. He gestured to Hastings and they stepped into the corridor. What now, Poirot? Hastings asked. You've rattled them, but no one's confessed. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Confessions are rare, Hastings, but contradictions, they are plentiful. Did you notice? Monsieur Crane's absence aligns with the time of death. Mademoiselle Lang was near the deck. Lady Beatrice's scarf places her closer than she admits, and the cigarette case. Why was it under the bed, not on a table? Hastings frowned. You think someone planted it? Perhaps, Poirot said. Or perhaps it was dropped in haste. We must search again, and we must watch. The murderer is clever, but no one is cleverer than Hercule Poirot. As they returned to the deck to re-examine the scene, Hastings felt a chill. The Sapphire yacht was a floating prison, and within its walls, a killer was hiding in plain sight. The red herrings. The Sapphire yacht lay silent under a starless sky, its decks bathed in the cold glow of lanterns. The air was heavy with the promise of a storm, though the sea remained calm for now. Inside the dining salon, the guests sat in uneasy vigil, their faces drawn with fatigue and suspicion. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the diligent observer, noted the subtle shifts in their demeanor.
When words do not. Hastings' notebook was filling rapidly. Crane absent, 10:30 to 10:35. Sylvia on deck, 10:40. Lady B's scarf, mere body. Lionel's cigarette case, under bed. He glanced at Victor Crane, who sat apart, his lawyer's composure unshaken, though his fingers tapped a slow rhythm on the table. Was he too calm? Hastings wondered if Crane's brief absence to fetch a drink was as innocent as claimed. The police, still hours away, left Poirot as the sole authority, and Hastings felt the weight of their reliance on the little Belgian detective. The salon door opened, and Captain Barrett entered, his weathered face grim. "Mr. Poirot's asked for everyone to stay put," he announced. "He's found something on the deck and wants to speak to us all." A murmur rippled through the group. Clara Dunworthy's knitting needles stilled. "What now?" she muttered. "More theatrics from that little man?" "He's no fool," Dr. Ernest Fowler said quietly, his eyes on his wife Evelyn, who twisted her emerald bracelet with nervous energy. "If anyone can sort this mess, it's him." Moments later, Poirot returned, his expression unreadable, but his eyes alight with purpose. He carried a small bundle wrapped in a handkerchief, which he placed carefully on the table. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice cutting through the tension. "I have made a discovery that complicates our puzzle, but first I must address a matter that has been misdirected." He unwrapped the handkerchief to reveal a small, silver cigarette lighter, engraved with the initials V.C. All eyes turned to Victor Crane, whose composure faltered for the briefest moment. "That's mine," he admitted, his voice steady but strained. "I must have dropped it during the evening." "Indeed," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. "It was found near the railing on the upper deck, close to where Sir Reginald was shot. Can you explain this, Monsieur Crane?" Crane adjusted his glasses, his smile tight. "I told you, I went to the bar at 10:30. I might have passed by the deck on my way back. I often carry my lighter. It's no surprise it fell." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet you did not mention being on the deck. You said you returned directly to the card room." Crane hesitated, then shrugged. "A minor oversight. I took a brief stroll to clear my head. The whiskey was stronger than I expected." Hastings scribbled, "Crane's lighter on deck. Claims he strolled, lying." He glanced at Poirot, who seemed to be studying Crane's every gesture. The lighter felt like a damning clue, but Hastings knew Poirot's methods. Sometimes the most obvious evidence was a distraction. Poirot turned to the group. "This lighter suggests Monsieur Crane was near the scene of the crime. But let us not leap to conclusions. There is another matter. The barman Jenkins confirms that Monsieur Crane adds an interesting detail. Monsieur Crane was seen speaking to a crewman near the bar, a man who then left his post briefly. Crane's jaw tightened. "I spoke to no one. Jenkins must be mistaken." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his smile enigmatic. "But Jenkins is certain. He described a heated exchange. We shall speak to this crewman later. For now, let us consider another clue. The absence of the pistol. It was not found on the deck, nor in any cabin. This suggests it was disposed of, perhaps thrown overboard. But why? A murderer who keeps a weapon risks discovery, yet one who discards it loses control. Lady Beatrice's voice was sharp. Are you saying one of us threw it into the sea? I say only that the pistol is gone, Poirot replied. But its absence tells us much. A killer who plans carefully does not leave evidence to chance. Yet the scarf, the cigarette case, the lighter, these are careless. Or are they meant to mislead? Sylvia Lang leaned forward, her auburn hair catching the light. You're suggesting someone planted these things? To frame Mr. Crane, perhaps? Poirot's gaze flickered to her. Mademoiselle, you are perceptive. A red herring is a fish that smells strongly to distract the hounds. These clues, they smell strongly, do they not? But Hercule Poirot is no hound. He follows the scent of truth. Hastings watched the guests' reactions. Lionel's eyes darted to Sylvia, then away. Clara Dunworthy's lips pursed, as if she disapproved of the theatrics. Dr. Fowler's brow furrowed, while Evelyn's fingers stilled on her bracelet. Lady Beatrice looked pale, her handkerchief crumpled in her hand. Poirot continued, addressing the group. Let us test another theory. Sir Reginald's announcement about his will created tension. I have examined the letter in his cabin. Incomplete but revealing. It mentions a significant change to benefit those most loyal. Who did he consider loyal, and who feared exclusion? Lionel flushed. He always said I was like a son. I didn't need to fear anything. Clara snorted. Reginald was fickle. Loyal one day, dismissive the next. He promised me a stipend once, then forgot it. Lady Beatrice's voice was cold. My husband's decisions were his own. I didn't pry. Poirot nodded. Yet someone pried enough to kill. Let us speak of opportunity. Mademoiselle Lang, you were on deck at 10:40. Did you see anyone near the upper deck? Sylvia shook her head. No one. It was quiet. I was near the salon entrance, not the upper deck. And yet, Poirot said,
the police will arrive soon and they will be less patient. I suggest you all reflect on your stories. The truth cannot hide forever. As Poirot and Hastings stepped into the corridor, Hastings whispered, That lighter. It's too convenient, Poirot. Crane's the obvious suspect now, but it feels wrong. He's too clever to leave such a clue. Precisimo, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. The lighter is a red herring meant to distract. But from whom? And why? We must look beyond the obvious, Hastings. The scarf, the cigarette case, the lighter, they point to different hands, but only one pulled the trigger. They returned to the deck, where Poirot examined the railing again. The smudge, now identified as a partial handprint, was preserved under a cloth. This print, Poirot said, it is too small for Monsieur Crane. It may belong to a woman or a man with delicate hands. We must compare. Hastings frowned. You think someone's trying to frame Crane, or is he just careless? Poirot's smile was cryptic. Carelessness is not in Monsieur Crane's nature, but desperation, that is possible. We must question the crewman Jenkins mentioned, and we must find that pistol. The sea is vast, but it cannot hide everything. As they prepared to summon the crewman, Hastings felt a growing unease. The clues were piling up, but they pointed in too many directions. Poirot, however, seemed invigorated, his mind a machine sorting through the chaos. The red herrings multiply, he murmured, but the truth is singular. We shall find it, mon ami. Chapter 6. A clue in detail. The sapphire yacht seemed to hold its breath as the night deepened,
the distant rumble of an approaching storm adding a restless edge to the already tense atmosphere. The dining salon, once a haven of laughter and clinking glasses, now felt like a courtroom, with Hercule Poirot as both judge and inquisitor. Captain Arthur Hastings sat near the grand windows, his notebook open, his pen capturing every detail. Crane's lighter on deck. Crewman's story of heated exchange. Smudge on railing. Small hand. He glanced at the guests, their faces a gallery of unease, Lady Beatrice's tightly clasped hands, Lionel Ashbourne's nervous glances, Sylvia Lang's guarded poise. Poirot, however, was not in the salon. He had slipped away with Captain Barrett to question the crewman Jenkins, leaving Hastings to observe the suspects. "Keep your eyes open, mon ami," Poirot had instructed. A gesture, a look, a word spoken too quickly. These are the threads that unravel the truth. Hastings, though no detective, was learning to see the world through Poirot's lens, where nothing was insignificant.
Glasses. Evelyn Fowler's emerald bracelet glinted as she shifted in her seat, while her husband, Dr. Fowler, stared into his coffee, lost in thought. The salon door opened, and Poirot returned, followed by Captain Barrett and a young crewman, Jenkins, whose nervous demeanor was evident in his fidgeting hands. Poirot's expression was serene, but his eyes held a spark of discovery. "Mesdames et messieurs," he announced, "I have spoken with Jenkins, who has provided a most illuminating detail. But first, I must share a clue, a small thing, yet significant. It concerns the brandy glass found near Sir Reginald's body." Hastings leaned forward, recalling the glass on the side table, its contents half spilled. Poirot continued, addressing the room. "The glass contained brandy, oui, but also something else. A faint residue, almost imperceptible, but detected by the nose of Hercule Poirot. It is chloral hydrate, a sedative, the same found in Lady Beatrice's cabin." A gasp escaped Lady Beatrice, her hand flying to her mouth. "That's absurd. I take a small dose for sleep, but I would never... I didn't touch his drink." Poirot raised a hand, his tone soothing but firm. "Calm yourself, madame. I do not accuse, I observe. The presence of chloral hydrate suggests Sir Reginald was drowsy, perhaps disoriented when the shot was fired. This explains why he did not struggle, why the wound shows no sign of resistance. But who administered it? And how?" Lionel Ashbourne's voice was sharp. "You're saying someone drugged him first? That's monstrous." "Monstrous, oui," Poirot said, "but methodical. Now, let us turn to Jenkins' account. He confirms Monsieur Crane fetched a whiskey at 10:30, but he also saw Monsieur Crane speaking to a crewman, Tompkins, near the bar. The conversation appeared heated, and Tompkins left his post shortly after. Monsieur Crane, you denied this exchange. Why?" Crane's smile was tight. "Jenkins is mistaken. I spoke to no one. I got my drink and returned to the card room." Jenkins, standing awkwardly by the door, cleared his throat. "Begging your pardon, sir, but I saw you clear as day. You and Tompkins were arguing. Something about money, I reckon." He looked right upset. Crane's eyes flashed. "This is nonsense! I demand you question Tompkins himself." "Indeed, we shall," Poirot said. Captain Barrett, position is curious. It was not knocked over, as one might expect if Sir Reginald fell suddenly. It was set down deliberately, after the shot. Hastings scribbled, chloral hydrate in brandy, glass not tipped, deliberate? Crane's argument with Tompkins? He whispered to Poirot, "This points to someone in the salon, doesn't it? They all had access to the bar." Poirot nodded slightly. "Oui, but access is not enough. We need motive and opportunity. The glass, the sedative, the lighter, these are pieces of a puzzle, but one piece is missing, the pistol." Captain Barrett returned with Tompkins, a burly crewman with a nervous tick in his jaw. Poirot fixed him with a piercing gaze. "Monsieur Tompkins, Jenkins claims you spoke with Monsieur Crane at 10:30. What was the nature of this conversation?" Tompkins shifted, his eyes darting to Crane. "It was nothing, sir. Just a word about the bar stock. Mr. Crane asked if we had more whiskey." Crane nodded. "Exactly as I said. A trivial matter." Poirot's smile was faint but knowing. "Yet Jenkins described a heated exchange, and you, Monsieur Tompkins, left your post shortly after. Where did you go?" Tompkins hesitated, then muttered, "To the crew quarters, sir. Needed to check something." "Check something," Poirot repeated, his tone skeptical. "We shall verify this. For now, you will remain with Captain Barrett." As Tompkins was led away, Poirot addressed the group. "The chloral hydrate is our clue in detail. It tells us the murderer was close to Sir Reginald, knew his habits, and acted with precision. But the lighter, the scarf, the cigarette case, these suggest distraction. Someone wishes us to look elsewhere. Who among you had access to Lady Beatrice's sleeping draught?" Lady Beatrice's voice was shrill. "Only I did! It's kept in my cabin, locked in my vanity. No one else could have taken it." "Yet it was taken," Poirot said, "or given. We shall examine your vanity, madame, with your permission." She nodded reluctantly, her face pale. Poirot turned to Clara Dunworthy. "Mademoiselle, you were in the lounge near the bar. Did you see anyone tamper with Sir Reginald's drink?" Clara's needles clicked sharply. "I saw nothing. I was knitting, not spying." "And you, Dr. Fowler?" Poirot asked. "As a physician, you know chloral hydrate. Did you notice anything unusual about Sir Reginald at dinner?" Dr. Fowler frowned. "He seemed tired, perhaps. I thought it was the wine. I didn't examine him." Evelyn Fowler spoke up, her voice unsteady. "I didn't notice anything either. Reginald was his usual self, boisterous, For I will return with more questions." As Poirot and Hastings left the salon, Hastings whispered, "That chloral hydrate, it's a game-changer, Poirot. Someone drugged him to make the shot easier. But who had access?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "That is the question, mon ami. The glass was not tipped. The sedative was precise. The clues are scattered like breadcrumbs. But Hercule Poirot sees the path. We must look closer at the relationships, love, loyalty, betrayal. The murderer is clever, but they have made one mistake. They underestimated me." They headed to Lady Beatrice's cabin, where Poirot examined the vanity. The chloral hydrate bottle was there, its cap slightly askew. "Interesting," he murmured. "The bottle is nearly full, yet enough was taken to drug a man. A small dose, carefully measured. This was no impulse." Hastings felt a chill. The Sapphire Yacht was a labyrinth of secrets, and each clue seemed to point to a different suspect. But Poirot's confidence was unshaken.
his mind a beacon in the fog of deception. Chapter 7. More Lies Surface. The sapphire yacht swayed gently in the pre-dawn darkness, the distant rumble of thunder growing closer as the storm loomed over the English Channel. Inside the dining salon, the atmosphere was stifling, the guests' faces etched with exhaustion and unease. Captain Arthur Hastings sat near the door, his notebook a tangle of observations. Chloral hydrate in brandy, Crane's lighter on deck, Tompkins' argument, Lady B's bottle. He watched the suspects, noting the subtle cracks in their composure. Clara Dunworthy's knitting needles faltering mid-stitch, Lionel Ashbourne's restless glances toward Sylvia Lang, Victor Crane's too perfect calm. Hercule Poirot, standing at the head of the table, seemed to draw energy from the tension, his eyes sharp and unyielding. Poirot had just returned from Lady Beatrice's cabin, where he had confirmed the chloral hydrate bottle's presence, its cap askew suggesting recent use. Now he addressed the group with his characteristic blend of courtesy and command. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "The puzzle of Sir Reginald Ashbourne's murder grows more intricate. The chloral hydrate in his brandy tells us the killer planned carefully, ensuring he was defenseless. But new truths have emerged, truths that reveal the lies beneath your alibis. Let us explore them." The guests stiffened, their eyes darting to one another. Lady Beatrice clutched her handkerchief, her lips tight. "What lies?" she demanded. "I've told you everything, Mr. Poirot." Poirot's smile was faint but piercing. "Debt. A gambling debt, oui? He says Sir Reginald confronted him earlier that day, demanding repayment." Tompkins, standing near Captain Barrett, shifted uncomfortably. "It's true, sir," he muttered. "Sir Reginald was sore about it, but I didn't see him after lunch. I swear it." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And yet, you left your post after speaking with Monsieur Crane. Why?" Tompkins hesitated, his tic more pronounced. I went to the crew quarters to fetch my paybook, to prove I'd pay him back. But I didn't go near the upper deck." Hastings scribbled, "Tompkins' debt to Sir R. Left post after Crane. Suspicious?" he whispered to Poirot. "Could Tompkins have done it? He had motive." Poirot shook his head slightly. "Possible, but unlikely. A crewman would not risk such a crime in plain sight. No, the truth lies closer to this room." He turned to Victor Crane. "Monsieur Crane, you denied speaking to Tompkins about money, yet Jenkins is certain. Why this deception?" Crane adjusted his cufflinks, his voice smooth. "Jenkins misheard. I asked Tompkins about the whiskey stock as he said. If he mentioned a debt, it wasn't to me." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Bon. Let us turn to another matter. The letter in Sir Reginald's cabin addressed to you, Monsieur Crane, spoke of a significant change to his will. You claim to know only broad intentions, yet Sir Reginald wrote of discussing this change with you days ago. Why conceal this?" Crane's smile faltered. I didn't think it relevant. Reginald often spoke of changes but rarely followed through. I advised him to wait until after the voyage. "A lie by omission," Poirot said softly. "And there is more. Mademoiselle Lang, you were seen on deck at 10:40, yet you claim you saw no one. But Jenkins, from his post at the bar, saw you pause near the staircase to the upper deck, not the salon entrance. You lingered, oui?" Sylvia Lang's composure wavered, her auburn hair catching the chandelier's light. "I may have stepped closer to the staircase, but I didn't go up. I was just taking in the sea air." Poirot's gaze was relentless. "And during this moment, you saw nothing? Heard nothing? A gunshot, perhaps?" "Nothing," Sylvia insisted, her voice firm but her eyes flickering to Lionel. Hastings noted, Sylvia near staircase, not salon. Lying about position? He leaned towards Poirot. "She's hiding something, isn't she?" "Oui," Poirot murmured.
But what? And why? He addressed the group again. Let us speak of motives. Sir Reginald's will was a source of tension. Lady Beatrice, you stand to inherit much, but your husband's announcement suggested others might benefit. Were you aware of his intentions? Lady Beatrice's voice was cold. I told you.
Were like a son to him.
Did you fear being cut out?
Lionel's face reddened. Never. Uncle Reginald promised to look after me. We were close. Clara Dunworthy snorted, her needles clicking. Close? Reginald thought you a spendthrift, Lionel. He told me so last month. Said you'd squandered your allowance on that actress. She glanced at Sylvia, her lips pursed. Sylvia's eyes flashed. That's a lie! Lionel and I are friends, nothing more. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Yet, friendships can hide deeper truths. Mademoiselle Dunworthy, you seem to know much about Sir Reginald's opinions. Did he confide in you about his will? Clara's needles paused. He mentioned tightening his purse strings, said some people expected too much. I didn't ask who. Poirot turned to Dr. Fowler. And you, Doctor, as Sir Reginald's friend, did he share his plans? Dr. Fowler's brow furrowed. He hinted at changes, but didn't elaborate. I advised him to rest more. His heart was weak. He ignored me. Evelyn Fowler spoke up, her voice unsteady. Reginald was stubborn. He never listened to Ernest's advice. Poirot nodded, pacing slowly. A weak heart? A new will? A sedative in the brandy? These are not random. And then there is the matter of the scarf, the cigarette case, the lighter. Each points to a different hand, yet only one fired the shot. Someone is weaving a web of deception, but Hercule Poirot sees the threads. He paused, his eyes locking onto Lady Beatrice. Madame, your chloral hydrate bottle was tampered with. The cap was loose, and a small amount is missing. Who had access to your cabin? No one, she cried. It's locked when I'm not there. Yet locks can be picked, Poirot said, or keys borrowed. Let us consider another motive. Jealousy. Monsieur Lionel, your closeness to Mademoiselle Lang has caused whispers. Did Sir Reginald disapprove? Lionel's voice was defiant. He liked Sylvia. He invited her himself. Sylvia nodded. Reginald was kind to me. He admired my work. Clara's voice was sharp. Kind? He was infatuated, girl. Everyone saw it. Lady Beatrice's face paled, her hands trembling. That's enough, Clara. Reginald was loyal to me. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Loyalty is a Speak to Tompkins again. Mes amis, your secrets are unraveling. If you know more, speak now before the police arrive. As he and Hastings left the salon, Hastings felt the weight of the new revelations. Crane's hiding something about Tompkins, he said, and Sylvia's story doesn't add up. But Lady Beatrice, she's breaking, isn't she? Poirot nodded. The pressure builds, Hastings. The murderer feels it most of all. We are close to a crack in their facade. The next clue will be decisive. They headed to the crew quarters, the storm's rumble echoing their steps. The Sapphire yacht was a cauldron of secrets, and Poirot was stirring it with relentless precision. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point.
The sapphire yacht trembled under the first gusts of the approaching storm, its timbers creaking as the sea grew restless. In the dining salon, the guests sat in a fragile silence, their faces pale under the chandelier's glow. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, each suspect eyeing the others as if searching for a telltale sign of guilt. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated near the door, felt the tension like a physical weight. His notebook was a mosaic of clues and contradictions. Chloral hydrate in brandy, Crane's lighter, Tompkins' debt, Sylvia near staircase, Lady B's jealousy. He glanced at Hercule Poirot, who stood at the head of the table, his small frame radiating an almost palpable intensity. The Belgian detective's calm exterior masked a mind racing through the labyrinth of lies that had surfaced. Poirot had just returned from the crew quarters, where he had questioned Tompkins further, but his findings there had been inconclusive. Tompkins stuck to his story of a trivial exchange with Victor Crane, though his nervous tic betrayed unease. Now, Poirot addressed the group, his voice steady but laced with a quiet urgency. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, "we are nearing the heart of this mystery. The lies you have told, some small, some grave, are unraveling. Tonight, a truth has emerged, a truth that shakes the foundation of your alibis. One of you has broken under the weight of guilt." The guests stiffened, their eyes darting to one another. Lady Beatrice's handkerchief was a crumpled wreck in her hands, her face drawn with grief and fear. Lionel Ashbourne's fingers twitched as if longing for his cigarette case. Sylvia Lang's poised facade faltered, her lips parting slightly. Clara Dunworthy's knitting needles lay idle, her sharp eyes fixed on Poirot. Victor Crane's loyally calm held, but his fingers grazed his glasses repeatedly. Dr. Ernest Fowler and his wife, Evelyn, sat close, their expressions guarded but strained. Poirot's gaze settled on Evelyn Fowler. "Madam Fowler," he said softly, "you have been most silent tonight, yet your silence speaks loudly. When I questioned you about the card room, you claimed to be absorbed in the game, unaware of Miss absence. But I have learned something new. The steward, Jenkins, saw you leave the card room at 10:15. Not to the bar, but toward the cabins. You returned 10 minutes later, flushed and agitated. Why did you lie?" Evelyn's hand froze on her emerald bracelet, her eyes wide. I didn't lie," she stammered. "I stepped out for a moment to fetch my shawl. It was chilly." Poirot's smile was gentle but unrelenting. "A shawl, madame. Yet your cabin is on the lower deck, and Jenkins saw you near the upper deck staircase. This is not the path to your cabin. What were you doing there?" Evelyn's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. I can't say," she whispered. "It's not what you think." Dr. Fowler placed a hand on her arm, his voice low but firm. "Evelyn, tell him, whatever it is, it's better out." The room held its breath. Evelyn's shoulders shook, and she buried her face in her hands. I was meeting someone," she said, her voice barely audible. "Not Reginald. It was Lionel." A gasp rippled through the group. Lionel's face turned scarlet, his eyes darting to Sylvia, then away. "That's nonsense," he blurted. "I was in the card room." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "No, Monsieur Lionel, you were not. Jenkins saw you too, near the cabins at 10:15. You and Madame Fowler were seen together, speaking in hushed tones. What was this meeting about?" Evelyn's voice broke. "It was nothing improper. I needed to speak to Lionel about a personal matter. Alone. I've been in financial trouble. Reginald refused to help, so I asked Lionel. He promised to speak to his uncle." Lionel nodded reluctantly. "It's true. Evelyn asked me for help. I said I'd talk to Uncle Reginald after the voyage. That's all." Sylvia Lang's voice was sharp. "You never mentioned this, Lionel. Why keep it secret?" "It wasn't anyone's business," Lionel snapped, then softened. "I didn't want to worry you, Sylvia." Lady Beatrice's eyes blazed. "You were scheming behind Reginald's back? Both of you?" Poirot raised a hand. "Calm yourselves.
This revelation is significant, but it does not clear you, Madame Fowler, nor you, Monsieur Lionel. Your meeting places you near the upper deck, close to the time of the murder. And it reveals a motive: money. Madame Fowler, your husband is a successful physician. Why this financial distress? Evelyn's tears fell freely now. Ernest doesn't know. I've been gambling, cards, horses. I thought I could manage, but the debts grew. I was desperate. Dr. Fowler's face paled, his voice hoarse. Evelyn, why didn't you tell me? I was ashamed, she sobbed. I thought Lionel could help without anyone knowing. Poirot nodded.
Was found on the deck, yet you claim only a brief stroll. Madame Fowler's lie suggests others may be hiding similar truths. Tell me, did you see Madame Fowler or Monsieur Lionel near the cabins? Crane's eyes narrowed. I saw no one. I told you, I fetched my whiskey and returned to the card-room. And yet, Poirot said, your lighter was on the deck near the smudge on the railing. A smudge too small for your hand, Monsieur Crane. Perhaps it belongs to Madame Fowler, or Mademoiselle Lang, or even Mademoiselle Dunworthy. Clara Dunworthy bristled. Don't drag me into this nonsense. I was in the lounge, knitting. Poirot's gaze shifted to Sylvia Lang. Mademoiselle, you were near the staircase at 10:40. Did you see Madame Fowler or Monsieur Lionel? Sylvia hesitated, her eyes flickering to Lionel. No, I saw no one. I was alone. Hastings scribbled. Evelyn and Lionel meeting at 10:15. Debts. Near cabins, not cardroom. Sylvia denies seeing them. He whispered to Poirot. Evelyn's confession. It's a bombshell. But does it make her the killer? Poirot's voice was low. Not yet, mon ami. Her confession is a crack in the facade, but the murderer's mask is still intact. This meeting explains Lionel's cigarette case in Sir Reginald's cabin. Perhaps he visited earlier to plead Evelyn's case. But the chloral hydrate, the pistol, these remain unanswered. Poirot addressed the group again. This confession changes our timeline. Madame Fowler and Monsieur Lionel were near the cabins at 10:15, not in the cardroom. This leaves a gap in their alibis, and it raises questions about others. Lady Beatrice, did you know of Madame Fowler's debts? Lady Beatrice shook her head, her voice cold. No. Reginald never mentioned it. And you, Dr. Fowler, Poirot asked. As Sir Reginald's friend, did you suspect financial troubles? Dr. Fowler's jaw tightened. I knew nothing. Evelyn kept it from me. Poirot nodded, pacing slowly. We have debts, secrets, and lies. The chloral hydrate was taken from Lady Beatrice's cabin, yet she claims no one had access. The pistol is still missing, yet someone disposed of it. And now, a secret meeting that places two suspects near the crime scene. Mes amis, the truth is close, but it requires one more push. He paused, his eyes locking onto Evelyn. Madam, is there more you wish to say? The weight of guilt is heavy, oui? Evelyn shook her head, tears streaming. I've told you everything, telling the whole truth. Poirot's eyes gleamed. She has given us a piece, Hastings, but not the whole. The murderer is watching, feeling the noose tighten. We must find the pistol, and we must uncover the final lie. They headed to the cabins, the storm's first raindrops pattering against the yacht's deck. The Sapphire yacht was a crucible of secrets, and Poirot was forging the truth with relentless precision. Chapter 9. The Trap. The sapphire yacht shuddered as the storm's first heavy rain lashed its decks, the wind howling through the rigging like a chorus of restless spirits. Inside the dining salon, the guests sat in a taut silence, their faces illuminated by the flickering chandelier, each reflecting a mix of fear, suspicion, and exhaustion. Captain Arthur Hastings, stationed near the door, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. His notebook was a labyrinth of clues. Evelyn's debts, meeting with Lionel at 10:15, chloral hydrate in brandy, Crane's lighter, Tompkins' debt. Evelyn Fowler's tearful confession had cracked the facade of unity among the suspects, and now Hercule Poirot was ready to tighten the screws. Poirot stood at the head of the table, his small frame commanding the room with an authority that belied his stature. His moustache was immaculate, his eyes sharp as he surveyed the guests. Lady Beatrice, her handkerchief a sodden wreck. Lionel Ashbourne, pale and fidgety. Sylvia Lang, her actress's poise fraying. Victor Crane, his lawyer's calm strained. Clara Dunworthy, her knitting abandoned. And Dr. Ernest Fowler, his face a mask of quiet shock beside his weeping wife. The storm outside seemed to echo the tempest within, and Poirot was about to stir it further. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice clear and deliberate. We stand at a crossroads in this investigation. The murder of Sir Reginald Ashbourne was no act of impulse. It was planned, precise, and cold. The chloral hydrate in his brandy, the missing pistol, the scattered clues, these are the work of a mind that seeks to deceive. But Hercule Poirot is not deceived. Tonight, I set a trap, and the murderer will feel its grip. A murmur ran through the group, eyes darting nervously. Hastings scribbled, Poirot setting a trap. Who will crack? He leaned towards Poirot, whispering, You've got something up your sleeve, haven't you? Poirot's lips twitched. Always, mon ami. The mind of the killer is like a clock. Tick, tick.
With Monsieur Lionel, motivated by her debts. But there is more to uncover. I propose an experiment. He paused, his eyes locking onto each suspect in turn. I have asked Captain Barrett to retrieve an item from the crew quarters, a small box found hidden in Tompkins' bunk. It contains a letter, unsigned, demanding repayment of a debt from Sir Reginald. The handwriting is disguised, but the intent is clear. Someone on this yacht sought to pressure Sir Reginald, perhaps to influence his will. Tompkins, standing near Captain Barrett, paled. That's not mine, sir. I never wrote no letter. Poirot raised a hand. Calm yourself, Monsieur Tompkins. The letter may not be yours, but it was found in your bunk. Someone placed it there, perhaps to cast suspicion. Or perhaps you are not as innocent as you claim. Victor Crane leaned forward, his voice sharp. This is absurd, Poirot. You're suggesting someone framed Tompkins? Or that he's involved? What's your game? My game, Monsieur Crane, Poirot said, is truth. The letter is a clue, but it is also a bait. The murderer, seeing suspicion shift to Tompkins, may feel safe, but they are not. Let us test this. I ask each of you to write a sample of your handwriting, a simple sentence. I was on the yacht last night. Captain Barrett will collect them. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, but none protested. Captain Barrett distributed paper and pens, and the room filled with the scratch of writing. Hastings watched closely, noting Sylvia's steady hand, Lionel's hesitant scrawl, and Lady Beatrice's trembling script. When the samples were collected, Poirot examined them briefly, his expression unreadable. Merci, he said, handing the papers to Barrett. These will be compared to the letter. But now, Let us apply more pressure. I have another question. Madame Fowler, your meeting with Monsieur Lionel was about money, oui? But was there more? Did Sir Reginald know of your debts, or of this meeting? Evelyn's eyes welled with tears. He suspected I was in trouble. He confronted me at dinner quietly when no one was listening. He said he'd help, but only if I told Ernest everything. I couldn't face it. Dr. Fowler's face darkened. Reginald knew, and you didn't tell me. I was ashamed, Evelyn whispered. I thought Lionel could convince him to help without exposing me. Poirot nodded, turning to Lionel. And you, monsieur? Did you speak to your uncle about Madame Fowler's debts? Lionel swallowed. I tried, after lunch. He was angry, said Evelyn should sort her own mess. That's when I left my cigarette case in his cabin. Clara Dunworthy snorted. Reginald was fed up with freeloaders. He told me so, said he was rewriting his will to cut out the leeches. Lady Beatrice's voice was icy. Clara, that's enough. Reginald never called anyone that.
Leeches is telling, Mademoiselle Dunworthy. It suggests Sir Reginald was disillusioned. Perhaps this explains the chloral hydrate, to silence him before he could act? Let us consider another possibility. Mademoiselle Lang, your presence on this yacht intrigued Sir Reginald. Did he make advances, perhaps? Sylvia's face flushed. He was kind, nothing more. He admired my acting, invited me to perform at his next gala. There was no impropriety. Yet whispers of an affair persist, Poirot said, glancing at Lady Beatrice. Madame, did you suspect your husband's affection for Mademoiselle Lang? Lady Beatrice's hand shook. I noticed his attention to her, but I trusted him. Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Victor Crane. And you, monsieur, as Sir Reginald's lawyer, knew of his will. Did you advise him to exclude anyone? Crane's voice was cool. I advised caution, nothing more. His decisions were his own. Poirot paced, his voice rising. Mes amis, the trap is set. The letter in Tompkins's bunk, the handwriting samples, the questions, they stir the pot. The murderer is among you, and they are nervous. They have planted clues, the scarf, the cigarette case, the lighter to mislead. But the chloral hydrate, the missing pistol, these are their mistakes. I ask you now, who saw Sir Reginald's brandy glass after dinner? Who had the chance to tamper with it? Silence fell, broken only by the storm's howl. Then Sylvia spoke, her voice barely audible. I saw him with the glass at 10, on the deck. He was alone, sipping it. Poirot's eyes locked onto her. And you, mademoiselle, were near the staircase at 10:40. Did you see the glass then? Sylvia hesitated. No, I don't think so. It was dark. Poirot nodded. Bon, the trap tightens. I will compare the handwriting, and I will search the deck again. The police arrive in hours, and they will find a killer unmasked. Reflect, mes amis, for the truth is near. As Poirot and Hastings left the salon, Hastings whispered, That letter in Tompkins's bunk. It's a plant, isn't it? You're flushing out the real killer. Poirot's smile was cryptic. Précisément, mon ami. The murderer believes they have outwitted us, but they have stepped into my trap. The handwriting will reveal nothing, but their reactions will. Watch closely, Hastings. The next move is theirs. They headed to the deck, rain lashing their faces. The Sapphire yacht was a stage, and Poirot was directing the final act, drawing the killer into the open, with relentless precision. The reveal. The Sapphire yacht groaned under the fury of the storm, its deck slick with rain, and the door felt his pulse quicken as he glanced at his notebook. Evelyn's debts, Lionel's meeting, chloral hydrate, Crane's lighter, Tompkins' letter. The clues had piled up, each pointing to a different suspect.
Yet Hercule Poirot's trap had stirred the pot, and now the moment of truth loomed. The police were due to arrive within the hour, and Poirot had promised a revelation that would unmask the killer. Poirot stood at the head of the table, his small frame a beacon of calm amidst the storm's chaos. His moustache was impeccable, his eyes blazing with the certainty of a man who had solved the puzzle. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and commanding. "The time has come to unveil the truth behind Sir Reginald Ashbourne's murder. The clues have been many: the scarf, the cigarette case, the lighter, the chloral hydrate, the missing pistol. But they are not random. They form a pattern, a tapestry woven by a clever hand. Hercule Poirot has seen through the deception, and now I will reveal the murderer." The guests leaned forward, their breaths held. Lady Beatrice's hands trembled, her handkerchief a sodden ruin. Lionel Ashbourne's face was pale, his eyes darting to Sylvia Lang, whose actress's poise had crumbled into nervous anticipation. Victor Crane's fingers stilled on his glasses, his lawyer's calm strained to breaking. Clara Dunworthy sat rigid, her knitting forgotten, while Dr. Ernest Fowler gripped his wife Evelyn's hand, her tear-streaked face a mask of dread. Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "Let us begin with the crime. Sir Reginald was shot at close range, a single bullet to the chest between 10 and 10:45. The brandy glass beside him contained chloral hydrate, ensuring he was drowsy, unable to resist. The pistol has not been found, likely thrown into the sea. The scarf, the cigarette case, the lighter, these were meant to mislead, to point to different hands. But the truth lies in the details and in the psychology of the killer." He turned to the group. First, the timeline. Lady Beatrice left Sir Reginald at 10 on the deck. Madame Fowler and Monsieur Lionel met near the cabins at 10:15, discussing her debts. Monsieur Crane fetched a whiskey at 10:30, seen arguing with Tompkins. Mademoiselle Lang was near the staircase at 10:40. Mademoiselle Dunworthy and Dr. Fowler were in the lounge. Each alibi has cracks, but only one conceals a murderer. Hastings scribbled. Poirot's reveal. Timeline confirmed. Who's the killer? He whispered. "You've got it, haven't you? Who is it?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Patience, mon ami. The little grey cells have done their work." He continued.
The brandy. Who had such access? Lady Beatrice claims her cabin was locked, yet the bottle's cap was loose. Someone entered, someone trusted. Lady Beatrice gasped. "You can't think I—" "No, madame," Poirot interrupted gently. "You loved your husband, oui, but your love was tested. You suspected his affection for Mademoiselle Lang, did you not?" Lady Beatrice's voice trembled. I noticed his attention to her, but I didn't act on it." Poirot nodded, turning to Sylvia. "Mademoiselle Lang, you were near the staircase at 10:40, yet you saw nothing. Why? Because you were distracted, perhaps by a sound or a person. You are an actress, skilled at hiding emotion, but your hesitation betrays you." Sylvia's eyes narrowed. "I told you, I saw no one." "Perhaps," Poirot said, "but let us consider the lighter. Monsieur Crane, it was found near the railing, yet you claim only a brief stroll. The smudge on the railing, too small for your hand, suggests another was there. And the cigarette case, Monsieur Lionel found under Sir Reginald's bed. Why? You said you left it after a visit, but it was hidden as if dropped in haste." Lionel flushed. "I didn't hide it. I must have dropped it." Poirot's smile was sharp. "And the letter in Tompkins's bunk, demanding repayment of a debt, a plant, meant to cast suspicion on a crewman. Who placed it there? Someone with access to the crew quarters, someone who knew Tompkins's debt to Sir Reginald." He paused.
his gaze sweeping the room. The murderer is among you, and they have made one fatal mistake. They underestimated Hercule Poirot. Let us reconstruct the crime. Sir Reginald was on the deck, sipping his brandy, already drowsy from the chloral hydrate. The killer approached, perhaps under the guise of conversation, and fired a single shot. The pistol was disposed of, likely overboard, but the clues, the scarf, the lighter, the cigarette case were left to confuse. Why? To scatter suspicion, to create a fog of doubt. Poirot's voice rose commanding. But the fog clears. The murderer had access to Lady Beatrice's chloral hydrate, knowledge of Sir Reginald's habits, and a motive tied to his will. The announcement at dinner promising a significant change threatened someone's future. Who feared this most? He turned to Victor Crane. Monsieur Crane, you knew of the will's changes. Sir Reginald's letter to you mentioned cutting out those disloyal. You advised him, but you also stood to lose. Your firm relied on his business. A new heir could disrupt that. Crane's face hardened. That's preposterous. I had no reason to kill him. Poirot nodded, then turned to Evelyn Fowler. Madame Fowler, your debts drove you to desperation.
Poirot's gaze shifted to Lionel. And you, Monsieur Lionel, you were like a son. Yet Sir Reginald called you a spendthrift. Did you fear being cut from the will? Lionel shook his head. I loved him. I'd never hurt him. Poirot stopped pacing, his eyes locking onto Dr. Ernest Fowler. Dr. Fowler, you have been quiet, but your silence speaks. As Sir Reginald's friend, you knew his heart was weak. You had access to medicines, perhaps even chloral hydrate. You were in the lounge, near the bar, where the brandy was poured. And your wife's debts? They shamed you, did they not? Dr. Fowler's face paled, his voice low. What are you saying? Poirot's voice was relentless. You learned of Evelyn's debts from Sir Reginald at dinner. He told you she begged for help, and you felt betrayed. You had the means, the chloral hydrate, perhaps from your own supply. You had the opportunity, slipping the sedative into his brandy in the lounge. You followed him to the deck, shot him with a pistol you later threw overboard, and planted the lighter to implicate Crane, the scarf to suggest Lady Beatrice, the cigarette case to point to Lionel. The letter in Tompkins's bunk was your final misdirection. Dr. Fowler stood, his voice shaking. This is madness. I was in the lounge reading. No, Poirot said. You were seen leaving the lounge at 10:20 by Jenkins, who thought you went to the cabins. You went to the deck, where Sir Reginald stood, drowsy and alone. You shot him, then returned to the lounge before the scream. Evelyn's voice was a wail. Ernest, no! Dr. Fowler's face crumpled, his hands trembling. I couldn't let him ruin us. He was going to expose Evelyn's debts, humiliate me. I took the chloral hydrate from Beatrice's cabin earlier, used my key as his physician. I only meant to talk to him, but he laughed, called me weak. I snapped. The room erupted in gasps. Lady Beatrice cried out, Ernest, how could you? Lionel stared, stunned, while Sylvia clutched the table. Crane's face was grim, Clara's eyes wide with shock. Poirot's voice was calm. You confessed, Doctor. The police will confirm the handwriting, the smudge, the chloral hydrate. The pistol is gone, but your guilt remains. Hastings scribbled. Dr. Fowler, killer. Motive, shame, debts, planted clues. He whispered. You did it, Poirot. You flushed him out. Poirot nodded. The little grey cells, mon ami. They see what others miss. As Captain Barrett restrained Dr. Fowler, the storm roared outside. A fitting coda to the unravelling
of a deadly. Arthur Hastings, seated near the door, felt a strange mix of awe and melancholy as he closed his notebook. Its final entry stark. Dr. Fowler confessed. Motive, shame over Evelyn's debts. Planted clues to mislead. The chandelier's light flickered, casting shadows that seemed to echo the secrets now laid bare. Hercule Poirot stood at the head of the table, his small frame a pillar of calm amidst the emotional wreckage. His moustache was as precise as ever, but his eyes held a quiet gravity, as if the weight of the truth had settled upon him. Dr. Fowler, now restrained by Captain Barrett, sat slumped, his face ashen, his hands trembling. Evelyn Fowler wept silently beside him, her emerald bracelet glinting with each shudder. Lady Beatrice, her grief raw, clutched her sodden handkerchief, while Lionel Ashburn stared at the floor, his earlier bravado gone. Sylvia Lang's actress's poise had vanished, her eyes red-rimmed. Victor Crane adjusted his glasses, his expression unreadable, and Clara Dunworthy sat rigid, her knitting untouched, as if processing the betrayal of a man she'd known for years. Poirot addressed the group, his voice soft but resonant. Mesdames et messieurs, the truth has been revealed. Dr. Ernest Fowler, driven by shame and desperation, murdered Sir Reginald Ashburn. He used chloral hydrate, taken from Lady Beatrice's cabin, to sedate his friend, ensuring no resistance. He shot him on the deck, disposed of the pistol in the sea, and planted clues, the scarf, the cigarette case, the lighter, the letter in Tompkins' bunk to scatter suspicion. But the little grey cells of Hercule Poirot saw through the deception. Hastings leaned toward him, whispering, "You were brilliant, Poirot. But how did you know it was Fowler? The clues pointed everywhere." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Mon ami, it is always the psychology. The clues were too many, too perfect, designed to confuse. But the chloral hydrate required medical knowledge, and the motive required a wound deeper than money. Dr. Fowler's silence, his shame at his wife's secret, was the key." The rest followed. He turned back to the group. "Let us reflect. This crime was born of human weakness, pride, shame, betrayal. Dr. Fowler, you were Sir Reginald's friend, yet you killed him to protect your reputation. Why did you not confide in him, as he confided in you?" Dr. Fowler's voice was barely audible. "He laughed at me, Poirot. Called me a fool for not knowing Evelyn's debts. I couldn't bear it. I lost control." Evelyn's sobs grew louder. "It's my fault, Ernest. If I hadn't hidden my gambling—" Poirot raised a hand. "No, madame. The fault lies with the one who acted. Each of you carried secrets, debts, jealousies, ambitions, but only one chose murder. This is the tragedy of the human heart, to let fear and pride overcome reason." Lady Beatrice's voice was hoarse. "You knew him. Could you take him from me?" Dr. Fowler's head bowed. "I'm sorry, Beatrice. I didn't mean. I just wanted to stop the humiliation." Poirot nodded, his expression somber. "And so, you wove a web of lies, planting clues to implicate others, the scarf to suggest Lady Beatrice's jealousy, the cigarette case to point to Monsieur Lionel's greed, the lighter to cast suspicion on Monsieur Crane's ambition, the letter to ensnare Tompkins. But each clue was a thread too bright, too obvious. Hercule Poirot looks for the subtle, the hidden." Sylvia Lang spoke, a voice trembling. "You mean he wanted us all to look guilty?" "Oui, mademoiselle," Poirot said. "A clever mind scatters suspicion to hide its own guilt. But the chloral hydrate betrayed him. Only a physician with access to Sir Reginald's trust and Lady Beatrice's cabin could have administered it so precisely. And only a man wounded by betrayal would act so decisively." Victor Crane cleared his throat. "Your trap, Poirot, the handwriting samples, the letter in Tompkins's bunk. Was it all to flush him out?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Précisément, monsieur. The letter was a gambit, a pressure to make the guilty nervous. Dr. Fowler's reaction, his silence, his glances at his wife confirmed his fear. The handwriting was a distraction, but his confession was the truth. Clara Dunworthy's voice was sharp.
And one of us. We've been dragged through this ordeal, accused and questioned.
Poirot inclined his head.
My apologies, mademoiselle, but in a close circle, all must be examined. Your secrets, your resentment of Sir Reginald's wealth, your sharp tongue made you a suspect. Yet you were innocent of this crime.
Lionel looked up, his voice low. What happens now, Mr. Poirot? The police are coming.
The police will take Dr. Fowler, Poirot said. They will verify the evidence, the smudge of the railing, the chloral hydrate, his access to the cabin. The pistol is lost to the sea, but his confession is enough. Justice will be served.
Captain Barrett spoke up.
The police launch is approaching, sir. They'll be here within the hour.
Poirot nodded.
Bon. Then my work here is nearly done. Mes amis, I leave you with this. The truth is a light that reveals all, even the shadows we wish to hide. Cherish honesty, for deception leads only to ruin.
He turned to Hastings, his voice low.
Come, mon ami, let us prepare for the police. The storm outside is fierce, but the storm within is quelled.
As they stepped into the corridor, Hastings felt a pang of sadness.
It's always a bit grim, isn't it, Poirot? Solving the case, but seeing the wreckage left behind.
Poirot's expression softened.
Oui, Hastings. The human heart is fragile, and murder is its darkest
Still howled. Poirot paused at the railing, gazing into the dark sea. The sapphire yacht will sail again, but it will carry this tragedy forever. So it is with life, mon ami. We move forward, but we do not forget. Hastings nodded, his thoughts on the broken lives in the salon. You did it, Poirot. You saw what no one else could. Poirot's smile was faint. The little grey cells, Hastings. They see the truth, even when it hides in plain sight. As the police launch's lights appeared on the horizon, Poirot straightened, ready to hand over the case. The sapphire yacht was no longer a gilded cage, but a vessel of justice, its secrets laid bare by the relentless logic of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 12. The Aftermath. The storm had begun to wane, leaving the sapphire yacht cloaked in a misty drizzle that blurred the horizon where the sea met the sky. The police launch from Torquay was now alongside, its officers boarding with a quiet efficiency that contrasted with the emotional chaos within the dining salon. Captain Arthur Hastings stood on the deck, watching as the officers conferred with Captain Barrett, their voices muffled by the patter of rain. His notebook, tucked into his jacket, felt heavy with the weight of the case. Dr. Fowler confessed, motive, shame over Evelyn's debts. Chloral hydrate planted clues. Case closed. Yet, despite the resolution, a sense of unease lingered, as if the yacht itself mourned the betrayal it had witnessed. Hercule Poirot, impeccable despite the damp, stood beside Hastings, his eyes fixed on the horizon. His moustache gleamed under the faint light of the deck lanterns, and his expression was one of quiet satisfaction tempered by melancholy. The revelation of Dr. Ernest Fowler's guilt had shocked the guests, and now, as the police took charge, Poirot's role was nearly complete. Inside the salon, Dr. Fowler sat under guard, his face a mask of resignation, while Evelyn wept silently beside him. Lady Beatrice, Lionel Ashbourne, Sylvia Lang, Victor Crane, and Clara Dunworthy remained in their seats, each grappling with the truth in their own way. Hastings glanced at Poirot. It's over, isn't it? The police will take Fowler, and the yacht will sail back to Torquay. But it feels unfinished somehow. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. Mon ami, a case is never truly finished. The truth is revealed, Justice is set in motion, but the human heart, it carries the scars. Come, let us return to the salon. There are matters to clarify before we depart.
The smudge on the railing, the planted clues, will support Dr. Fowler's confession. Grayson nodded. Your work's been thorough, Mr. Poirot. We'll take it from here. The smudge is being analyzed, and we've sent divers to search for the pistol, though the sea's a tricky place to find anything. Poirot inclined his head. The pistol is likely lost, but the confession is sufficient. Dr. Fowler acted alone, driven by shame and desperation. The guests, listening, seemed to deflate further. Lady Beatrice spoke, her voice hoarse.
Mr. Poirot, you've given me answers, but not peace. Reginald is gone, and now Ernest. How did it come to this?
Poirot's eyes softened. Madame, the human heart is a complex thing. Dr. Fowler was wounded by his wife's secrets, and Sir Reginald's refusal to help, his mockery, pushed him to a terrible act. It is a tragedy of pride and betrayal. Evelyn Fowler looked up, her face streaked with tears. I drove him to it, didn't I? My gambling, my lies. Poirot shook his head. No, madame. Your actions created the storm, but Dr. Fowler chose to sail into it. Each of us has a choice, and he chose murder. Lionel Ashburn, his voice low, asked, What happens to the will now? Uncle Reginald's announcement. It's all moot, isn't it? Poirot turned to Victor Crane. Monsieur Crane, as Sir Reginald's lawyer, perhaps you can clarify. Crane adjusted his glasses, his tone professional but subdued. The will remains as it was before his announcement. He hadn't finalized the changes. Lady Beatrice inherits the bulk of the estate, with provisions for Lionel and minor bequests to others, including Clara. Clara Dunworthy's lips pursed. Minor, indeed. Reginald always was stingy. Sylvia Lang spoke softly. And what of us, Mr. Poirot? We've been through this ordeal, suspected, questioned. How do we move on? Poirot's gaze was steady. Mademoiselle, you move on by facing the truth. You all carried secrets, debts, ambitions, jealousies, but you did not kill. Hold to that, and let time heal the rest. Inspector Grayson signaled to his men. We'll take Dr. Fowler to the launch. The rest of you will return to Torquay for statements. Mr. Poirot, your assistance has been invaluable. Poirot bowed slightly. It is my duty, Monsieur l'Inspecteur. The little grey cells serve justice, always. As the police escorted Dr. Fowler out, Evelyn followed, her sobs echoing in the corridor. The remaining guests began to gather their belongings, their movements slow, as if weighed down by the night's revelations. Hastings watched them.
Ripples touched them all. They stepped onto the deck, where the rain had softened to a mist. The police launch was preparing to depart, its lights cutting through the dawn's grey haze. Poirot paused at the railing, gazing at the sea. The sapphire yacht is a beautiful thing, mon ami, but beauty can hide darkness. This case, it reminds us that order and method must prevail, lest chaos consume us. Hastings nodded, his thoughts on the fractured lives left behind. You saw it all, Poirot. The clues, the lies, the motives. I'd have been lost without you. Poirot's smile was warm. No, Hastings, you see more than you think. Your notes, your observations, they are the canvas on which I paint. Together, we find the truth. As the yacht prepared to return to Torquay, Poirot straightened, his eyes bright. Come, mon ami. The sea is calm now, and our work is done. Let us leave this place of secrets and return to the world of order. Hastings followed, casting one last glance at the deck where Sir Reginald had fallen.
The sapphire yacht would sail again, but its glamour was forever dimmed by the shadow of murder. 13. The Unraveling Threads. The sapphire yacht cut through the grey waves toward Torquay, its engines humming steadily as the dawn broke, casting a pale light over the sea. The storm had passed, leaving behind a damp chill and a sky streaked with clouds. Inside the dining salon, the guests were subdued, their belongings gathered as they prepared to disembark. The police launch had departed, with Dr. Ernest Fowler in custody, his confession still echoing in their minds. Captain Arthur Hastings stood near the grand windows, his notebook tucked away, its pages a chronicle of the case. Dr. Fowler, murderer. Chloral hydrate, planted clues. Motive, shame, betrayal. Yet, despite the resolution, a sense of disquiet lingered, as if the yacht carried ghosts that refused to be laid to rest. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in his tailored coat, stood beside Hastings, his eyes scanning the horizon. His moustache gleamed in the soft light, and his expression was one of quiet contemplation, as if he were tying up the final threads of the mystery. The guests, Lady Beatrice, Lionel Ashburn, Sylvia Lang, Victor Crane, and Clara Dunworthy, sat in scattered groups, their voices low, their faces marked by the strain of the night's revelations. Evelyn Fowler had accompanied her husband with the police, her tearful departure a stark reminder of the personal cost of the crime. Hastings glanced at Poirot, his voice low. "It's done, Poirot, but it doesn't feel complete. Fowler's confession tied up the murder, but what about the others? Their secrets."
Others set the stage. Come, let us speak with the guests one last time. There are threads yet to unravel. They re-entered the salon, where the air was heavy with the scent of coffee and the weight of unspoken regrets. Poirot addressed the group, his voice calm but resonant. "Mesdames et messieurs, the police have their man, and justice will follow its course. But before we reach Torquay, I wish to clarify the threads that wove this tragedy. Each of you played a part, not in the crime, but in the tapestry of motives and secrets that surrounded it." Lady Beatrice looked up, her face drawn. "What more is there to say, Mr. Poirot? Ernest killed my husband. What else matters?" Poirot's gaze softened. "Madame, it matters because understanding heals. Your husband's announcement about his will stirred fears of loss, of exclusion. You suspected his affection for Mademoiselle Lang, oui?" Lady Beatrice's lips trembled. "I did. I saw how he looked at her, how he invited her to perform at his gala. I thought he might betray me." Sylvia Lang's voice was quiet but firm. "There was nothing between us, Lady Beatrice. Reginald admired my work, nothing more. I swear it." Poirot nodded. "I believe you, mademoiselle, but the suspicion fueled tension. Madame, your scarf, found near the body, was placed by Dr. Fowler to implicate you. He knew of your jealousy and used it." Lady Beatrice's eyes welled with tears. "I was a fool to doubt him. And now he's gone." Poirot turned to Lionel. "Monsieur Ashbourne, you sought to help Madame Fowler with her debts, meeting her in secret. Your cigarette case, left in Sir Reginald's cabin, was another of Dr. Fowler's ploys to suggest your greed. But your motive was loyalty, not malice, oui?" Lionel nodded, his voice low. "I wanted to help Evelyn. Uncle Reginald was harsh, said she'd brought it on herself. I thought I could change his mind." Clara Dunworthy snorted, her sharp eyes fixed on Lionel. "You were always soft, Lionel. Reginald saw you as a boy. Not an heir. He told me he planned to limit your inheritance. Poirot's smile was faint.
And you, Mademoiselle Dunworthy, harbored resentment for Sir Reginald's frugality. Your sharp words about his wealth made you a suspect, but your role was only to observe, not to act.
Clara's lips pursed. I spoke my mind, that's all. Reginald deserved better than this. Poirot turned to Victor Crane.
Monsieur Crane, your lighter was another of Dr. Fowler's distractions, placed to cast suspicion on your ambition. You knew of the will's changes, but you hid the extent of your knowledge.
Exploited your absence at the bar to place the lighter, knowing you'd be near the deck. Hastings scribbled in his mind, though his notebook remained closed. Fowler used everyone's secrets. Brilliant, but cruel. He leaned toward Poirot, whispering, He played them all, didn't he? Used their fears to cover his tracks. Oui, Poirot murmured. A murderer must know his victims, and Dr. Fowler knew them well. His wife's debts, Lady Beatrice's jealousy, Lionel's loyalty, Crane's ambition, Clara's resentment, he wove them into his deception. Poirot addressed the group again. This tragedy began with secrets, mes amis. Madame Fowler's debts drove her to desperation, and Dr. Fowler's shame drove him to murder. He used his medical knowledge to administer the chloral hydrate, his access as a friend to enter Lady Beatrice's cabin, and his cunning to plant clues. But he could not hide from the truth. The smudge on the railing, too small for a man's hand, matched his, delicate from years of surgical precision. The letter in Tompkins's bunk was a final misdirection, but it crumbled under scrutiny. Sylvia Lang spoke, her voice soft. How do we live with this, Mr. Poirot, knowing we were all part of it, even if we didn't pull the trigger? Poirot's expression was grave. You live by facing the truth, mademoiselle. Secrets breed darkness, but honesty brings light. Sir Reginald's death was a tragedy, but it need not define you. Learn from it, and let it guide you to better paths. Lady Beatrice stood, her voice steady despite her tears. Thank you, Mr. Poirot. You've given me clarity, if not comfort. I'll honor Reginald's memory, whatever his flaws. Poirot bowed slightly. Madam, your strength is admirable. Hold to it. As the yacht neared Torquay, the guests began to disperse to their cabins, preparing for the formalities ashore. Poirot and Hastings stepped onto the deck, where the air was fresh with the scent of rain-soaked wood. The sea was calmer now, the horizon brightening with the promise of a new day. Hastings sighed. It's a grim affair, Poirot. Fowler's confession, Evelyn's pain, Beatrice's loss, it's all so heavy. Poirot nodded, gazing at the sea. Oui, mon ami. Murder leaves scars, but it also reveals truths. We have done our part, brought order to chaos, light to darkness. The sapphire yacht will dock, and life will continue, but it will carry this lesson. The truth, however painful, must always prevail. They stood in silence, watching the coastline grow closer. The case was closed, but its echoes were...
Captain Arthur Hastings sat, his thoughts still anchored to the events of the previous night. His notebook, now safely stowed in his satchel, held the final threads of the mystery. Dr. Fowler's confession, chloral hydrate, planted clues. The yacht's secrets exposed. Yet as the Devon coastline receded, Hastings felt a lingering unease, a sense that the ripples of Sir Reginald Ashburn's murder would extend far beyond the yacht's polished decks. Hercule Poirot sat opposite, his small frame neatly composed, his hat resting on the seat beside him. His eyes, usually sharp with purpose, was softened by a reflective calm, as if the resolution of the case had left him contemplating deeper truths. He sipped a cup of tea, procured with some difficulty at Torquay Station, gazed out to the window, his moustache twitching slightly with each jolt of the train. The police, led by Inspector Japp, had taken Dr. Ernest Fowler into custody, and the Sapphire yacht was returning to port under Captain Barrett's command, carrying its remaining guests and their fractured lives. Hastings broke the silence, his voice low. "It's a grim affair, Poirot. Fowler's confession tied it all up. But what happens to the others? Lady Beatrice, Evelyn, Lionel. They're all left to pick up the pieces." Poirot set his teacup down, his fingers tracing the rim. "Oui, mon ami. A murder does not end with the capture of the guilty. It leaves scars on those who remain. Lady Beatrice will mourn, but she is resilient. She will find a way to honor her husband's memory. Madame Fowler must face her guilt and rebuild her life without her husband. Monsieur Lionel and Mademoiselle Lang, they may find strength in each other, or their secrets may drive them apart. The legacy of Sir Reginald's death is not only in his will, but in the lives it has changed." Hastings leaned back, frowning. "That will, it started it all, didn't it? Fowler killed to stop Sir Reginald from exposing Evelyn's debts, but we still don't know what the will said. Do you think Crane will sort it out?" Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming with quiet certainty. "Monsieur Crane is a man of order, like myself. He will execute Sir Reginald's wishes, whatever they may be. The letter in Sir Reginald's cabin suggested he intended to reward loyalty, likely Lady Beatrice and perhaps Lionel. But the details matter little now. The motive was fear of change, and that fear drove Dr. Fowler to murder." Hastings shook his head, marveling. "You saw it all, Poirot. The chloral hydrate, the planted clues. Fowler thought he'd outsmarted everyone, but you caught him in your trap." Poirot's smile was faint but proud. "The little grey cells, Hastings. They see what others overlook. Dr. Fowler was clever, but his crime was born of passion, not reason. The scarf
Required a physician's knowledge, and his shame at his wife's secrets betrayed him. The trap was merely a nudge to make him confess. The train whistle blew, signaling a stop at a small station. Hastings glanced out the window, watching villagers bustle about, their lives untouched by the drama of the Sapphire yacht. "Do you ever tire of it, Poirot?" he asked. "Solving these cases? Seeing the worst of people?" Poirot's expression softened, his voice almost wistful. "No, mon ami. It is my purpose to bring order to chaos, to find truth in deception. But I confess, each case leaves a mark. The human heart is a puzzle, Hastings, more complex than any crime. It loves, it hates, it betrays, yet it also heals. That is why we continue." Hastings nodded, his thoughts drifting to the guests. "I wonder what they'll do now. Sylvia and Lionel, do you think they'll stay close? And Clara Dunworthy, with her sharp tongue, she seems shaken, despite herself." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Mademoiselle Lang and Monsieur Lionel share a bond, but it is fragile. Secrets test love, and they have many to overcome. As for Mademoiselle Dunworthy, her sharpness hides a lonely heart. She will return to her knitting, but she will carry this lesson. To judge less harshly, perhaps. Time will tell." The train lurched forward, resuming its journey. Hastings leaned back, his mind still on the yacht. "And Victor Crane? He came out of it unscathed, didn't he? His lighter was a plant, but he never flinched." "Oui," Poirot said. "Monsieur Crane is a man of calculation. He knew his innocence and trusted my method. But he, too, will reflect on this night. Ambition can blind, and he walked close to suspicion." As the countryside rolled by, Hastings felt a sense of closure, though tinged with sorrow. "You gave them justice, Poirot. Sir Reginald's killer is caught, and the truth is out. But it's a heavy price." Poirot nodded, his gaze returning to the window. "Justice is not always light, Hastings. It is a balance, a restoration of order. Sir Reginald's death was a tragedy, but its resolution is a triumph of reason. We leave the sapphire yacht behind, but its lessons remain." The train sped toward London, carrying Poirot and Hastings away from the sea and its secrets. The case was closed, but the echoes of the sapphire yacht, its glamour, its betrayal, its truth, would linger, a reminder of the delicate dance between order and chaos that Poirot navigated with such mastery. Chapter 15. The Final Note. The train to London hummed steadily, its wheels a rhythmic counterpoint.
Fowler's confession. Chloral hydrate. Planted clues. Truth unveiled. The weight of the case lingered, a somber reminder of the fragility of trust and the cost of betrayal. Outside, the English countryside unfolded in patches of green, oblivious to the drama that had played out at sea. Poirot, seated opposite, was the picture of meticulous calm. His hat rested on the seat, his teacup empty, and his moustache gleamed with its usual precision. Yet his eyes, fixed on the passing landscape, held a reflective depth, as if the resolution of Sir Reginald Ashburn's murder had stirred thoughts beyond the case itself. The sapphire yacht was far behind them now, its opulent decks a fading memory. But the echoes of its tragedy, grief, shame, and shattered lives remained vivid. Hastings broke the silence, his voice low. "It's done, Poirot. The case is solved. Fowler's in custody, and the yacht will sail back to Torquay. But I can't help feeling we've left something unfinished. All those people, Lady Beatrice, Evelyn, Lionel, they'll carry this forever." Poirot turned from the window, his expression soft but resolute. "Mon ami, you are correct. A murder leaves scars that do not fade with the closing of a case. Lady Beatrice will mourn her husband, but she will find strength in time. Madame Fowler must confront her guilt and rebuild without her husband. Monsieur Lionel and Mademoiselle Lang may forge a new path, or their secrets may divide them. The sapphire yacht was a stage for human frailty, and we, Hastings, have merely restored order to its chaos." Hastings leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "You make it sound so neat, Poirot, but it's messy. Fowler was a friend, a doctor. How does a man like that turn to murder? And those clues, the scarf, the cigarette case, the lighter, were they really just distractions?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Précisément, Hastings. Dr. Fowler's crime was born of a wounded heart, shame at his wife's debts, betrayal by his friend's scorn. He was no villain, but a man driven to desperation. The clues were his attempt to muddy the waters, to cast suspicion on all but himself. The scarf suggested Lady Beatrice's jealousy, the cigarette case pointed to Lionel's greed, the lighter implicated Crane's ambition, and the letter in Tompkins' bunk was a final misdirection. But the chloral hydrate, that was his mistake. Only a physician could use it so precisely, and only a man consumed by pride would act to protect his name at such a cost. Hastings shook his head, marveling. "You saw it all, didn't you? From the moment we found Sir Reginald's body, you were piecing it together. The psychology, the contradictions. That trap with the handwriting samples and the letter, it was brilliant." Silence, his glances at his wife, his medical knowledge, these were the threads that wove the truth. The confession was merely the final knot. The train slowed as it approached a station, the platform bustling with passengers. Hastings glanced out, then back at Poirot.
What do you think will happen to them now? Lady Beatrice especially. She's lost so much. Poirot nodded, his voice gentle. Lady Beatrice is a woman of resilience. She will grieve, but she will endure. The will, as Monsieur Crane will confirm, lightly favors her, ensuring her future. Monsieur Lionel may inherit a share, but he must learn to stand on his own. Mademoiselle Lang, with her talent and spirit, will return to the stage perhaps wiser. Mademoiselle Dunworthy will sharpen her tongue elsewhere, and Monsieur Crane will guard his ambitions more carefully. As for Madame Fowler, her path is the hardest. Guilt is a heavy burden, but she may yet find redemption. Hastings sighed. And us? Back to London to wait for the next mystery. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. We, Hastings. London awaits, with its comforts and its secrets. But for now, I crave a proper café au lait, not this English tea. The Sapphire Yacht has tested us, but it has also reminded us of our purpose, to seek truth, to restore order, to shine light where darkness reigns. The train pulled into Paddington Station, its whistle piercing the air. Poirot rose, adjusting his hat with a precise flick. Come, mon ami. The world continues, and so must we. The Sapphire Yacht is behind us, but its lessons linger. Trust is fragile. Truth is relentless, and the human heart is both the puzzle and the prize. Hastings followed, his steps lighter despite the weight of the case. The platform was alive with the chaos of arrivals, the clamor of voices and footsteps a stark contrast to the yacht's stifling silence. Poirot moved through the crowd with his usual elegance, a small figure in a world of endless mysteries. As they hailed a cab, Hastings glanced back at the train, its departure signaling the end of their journey from Torquay. The Sapphire Yacht had been a gilded cage, its secrets laid bare by Poirot's relentless logic. Now, as London's familiar streets unfolded before them, Hastings felt a quiet pride. They had faced the darkness and emerged with the truth, a testament to the power of reason and the enduring partnership of Poirot and his loyal friend.